Don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Story 1. When I was younger, between the ages of 18 and 20, I used to visit my family's cottage every summer on holidays and occasionally on other special occasions. The cottage was located on a private beach, facing a lake and surrounded by a dense forest. There were only a few other properties nearby, one of which had always been abandoned. It was said to belong to a European family, possibly Polish or German, but no one had ever seen or heard of anyone coming to maintain the place. My cousins, my brother, and I used the abandoned cottage as a hideout to smoke and escape the watchful eyes of the adults. It was like stepping into a time capsule. The furniture, decor, and overall atmosphere seemed frozen in the 1980s. There were old brown sofas, a dimly lit living room connected to a small kitchen, and dusty wine glasses scattered about. It was clear that other people had been there too. We would find modern beer bottles, cigarette butts, and furniture moved around. Yet, it never felt like the owners had returned, just other curious visitors like us. One day, we discovered a door leading to the basement. When we opened it, we saw a staircase descending into darkness. The floor nothing but packed dirt. The walls were exposed brick, adding to the eerie feeling. None of us ever dared to go down. We joked about a serial killer living down there or bodies buried beneath the dirt. But deep down, we all felt uneasy about what might actually be below. On Thanksgiving, my brother, 2 cousins, and I decided to visit the abandoned cottage again. We were sitting at the dining table, smoking and chatting when the topic of the basement came up. That's when we noticed something strange. The basement door was open. It had always been locked before. We figured other teenagers had been there and left it unlocked. My brother stood up to go lock it, mocking us for being scared. He took only a few steps before we heard it, a knock. It was a hollow sound, like something striking an empty surface. We all froze. My brother assumed one of us was playing a prank on him, but no one was laughing. We exchanged uneasy glances, each of us waiting for someone to admit it. My brother looked at me, expecting to see amusement, but instead, he saw my tense expression. His face changed, realizing that whatever made the noise wasn't one of us. He hesitated, but continued walking toward the door. Just as he reached out, the door creaked and opened slightly on its own. That was enough. We bolted. Grabbing our phones and whatever we could carry, we sprinted toward the exit. My brother was behind me when he suddenly stopped and turned around. "There's someone there," he shouted. I didn't want to look, but my curiosity got the better of me. Just before I reached the door, I glanced back. A hand was emerging from the basement, pushing the door open wider. And then, from the darkness below, we heard a voice, low, rough, and chillingly calm. Go. That was all we needed. We ran even faster, leaving behind anything that wasn't firmly in our grasp. By the time we reached our family's cottage, we were breathless and shaking. We told our parents everything, and they called the police. Officers arrived and searched the abandoned cottage, but found nothing. They suggested filing a report about the property's abandonment, but none of us wanted to get involved any further. A few days later, my brother went back alone. He told me what he found. In the middle of the living room, several dead baby raccoons and squirrels lay motionless. They looked fresh, with no visible injuries. How do 2 different species die in the same place at the same time? I asked. He had no answer. He mentioned that the baby raccoons had fur, meaning they had lived for a while before dying there. Was it a warning? Had someone or something placed them there? Or was it just a bizarre coincidence? We never found out, and I have never set foot in that abandoned cottage again. Story 2. When I was 19 in the early 90s, I got lost in Baltimore, and a lie might have saved my life. My brother and his wife had just gotten married and were living in the city. I was from Maryland, but had never really spent much time in Baltimore. And while I knew parts of it had a reputation for being rough, I wasn't too concerned. I had one simple task: drive straight to my brother's house. Nothing complicated, nothing to worry about. That was until I made a wrong turn. One moment, I was cruising along, following my hastily scribbled directions, and the next, I found myself on MLK Boulevard. And back then, MLK Boulevard was not somewhere you wanted to be if you didn't know the area. It was a stretch of abandoned gas stations, boarded up row houses with broken windows, bars with flickering neon signs barely clinging to life, and the occasional flicker of movement in the shadows. A few people were walking in the middle of the street, brown paper bags clutched in their hands, their eyes heavy and unfocused. My pulse quickened as I gripped the steering wheel, my instincts screaming that I needed to get out of there, fast. But panic wouldn't help me. If I kept driving aimlessly, I'd only get more lost, and I had no idea which areas were safer than others. That's when I spotted a rundown gas station with a row of payphones near the front. It looked abandoned, the windows dark and shattered, but the payphones were still there. I pulled in quickly, trying not to look as desperate as I felt. Leaving my car running, I grabbed a handful of change from the cup holder and rushed to the phone. My brother picked up almost immediately. "Where are you?" he asked. I don't know," I admitted, scanning for street signs. "I think I made a wrong turn." His voice was impatient but not unkind. He knew the city well, and to him, these streets were just part of the landscape. But for me, it was uncharted territory, and I was already struggling to keep up as he rattled off a list of street names and turns I needed to take. I pressed the phone between my ear and shoulder, fumbling to write everything down. My hand was shaking. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw them. 3 men. They were leaning against my car that I had left running. 2 were on the passenger side, arms crossed, looking me up and down. The third, the tallest of them, was leaning right against the driver's side door, like he owned it. He was staring directly at me. My stomach dropped. I went completely still, my fingers frozen on the keypad. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, and I suddenly became hyper-aware of everything. The smell of gasoline, the flickering streetlight above me, the sound of my brother's voice on the other end of the line, still giving me directions like nothing was wrong. "Did you get that?" my brother asked. I tried to answer, but my voice caught in my throat. I blinked hard, willing myself to stay calm. My sunglasses hid my eyes, but I could feel the heat of tears burning behind them. I sniffled. "Why are you upset?" my brother asked, his tone shifting slightly. "I'm giving you directions, just follow them." I couldn't tell him. The men were too close. They could hear everything I said. My fingers clenched around the phone as I tried to collect myself, but it was too late. The tears had started. I had no choice. I had to go back to my car. With the phone still in my hand, I took a slow, measured step forward. Then another. The man against my door didn't move. If anything, He looked amused. As I reached for the handle, he lifted his hand, slowly, deliberately, and wiped one of my tears away with his thumb. Then he smiled. "Why you crying, baby?" he murmured. "Ain't nothing bad happened yet." Something in my brain snapped. I wasn't thinking anymore. My body took over. Before I even realized what I was saying, I let out a shaky sob and blurted, "I just shot my boyfriend. The cops are looking for me." Silence for one breath. Two. Then movement. All three of them took off. They didn't hesitate. They didn't ask questions. They just ran. The tallest one bolted across the street without looking. The other two split in opposite directions, sprinting full speed into the night. One of them dropped something, a crumpled cigarette pack, maybe a lighter, but he didn't stop to pick it up. I didn't wait to see where they went. I yanked open my car door, threw myself inside, and locked it in one motion. My hands were shaking so badly that I fumbled with the gear shift, but somehow I managed to back out of that gas station and get the hell out of there. I don't remember most of the drive to my brother's house. I barely even remember breathing. All I knew was that I had just lied my way out of a very, very bad situation. To this day, I have no idea what those men wanted. Maybe they were just messing with me. Maybe they had worse intentions. I'll never know. But one thing's for sure. That night, a lie, one I didn't even think about before I said it, saved me.